Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
Today I'm joined by Markus Sieger, CEO of Polpharma Group, one of Central and Eastern Europe's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers. After a decade at the helm and 25 years with the company, Markus will step down as CEO on the 1st of January 2026, transitioning to the supervisory board. Today, in this episode, we'll be discussing his journey leading and growing Polpharma, the evolution of generic medicines in Europe, and what comes next for Polpharma and the industry as a whole. Thank you for joining me, Markus.
Thank you, Dora. Nice to be here.
Do you want to start by telling me a bit about you then, a bit about your background and career history?
I'm not sure how interesting it is, my personal history, but I grew up in Switzerland, made my schools there, then was able to work in the US in information technology. And because my background is economics, I then joined an investment bank boutique and I helped for 20 years entrepreneurs in emerging markets to grow. So emerging markets meaning Central Eastern Europe, Singapore. And we were actually very active in different industries. We did media, we did fast-moving consumer goods, and we did obviously pharma. And I was active in all three. So my point is always that I'm a generalist. I bring a lot of expertise out of other industries into the pharmaceutical world, which I think is a little bit slow in adapting. Might be they're innovative in new products, but they're slow in adapting on how to work, the business models and so forth. So I think there's a lot of room for innovation, which actually I had the pleasure to explore.
Coming from emerging markets, how was that transition to an established large organization like Polpharma?
I was actually always involved with Polpharma because 25 years ago I was part of the privatization team, which helped the investor, Mr. Starak, to acquire Polpharma. And then I was for a certain time on the supervisory board. And as you said, 10 years ago, when I was still in the board decided to nominate me as a CEO to run the company, because we had a very clear view on how we wanted to evolve, and we needed a trusted environment to do that. So therefore, me, which knew very well, obviously the main stakeholders in terms of upwards looking, was chosen, and then I had really the pleasure to build the company over the last 10 years.
That background in finance, how did that, do you think, influence how you approached the CEO role at Polpharma?
Yeah, I saw this more from a consumer, patient, and market perspective, because obviously I have been active helping entrepreneurs grow. So I see myself more as an entrepreneur, which has been mandated by the board and the owner to run the company. And I think I run the company with the principles. I would also run my own company, with a lot of respect and ownership and dedication to the role. And I think that's the big piece. Finance obviously is a good framework to have, and obviously I also continued to explore this when I went to Stanford into a longer course and try to always get more the application side of finance. I'm not really the analyst type of finance which goes into every single detail in terms of finance, but I think it's a very good tool obviously to steer a company and to get insights.
So what drew you to Polpharma initially when you started, and what did the company look like when you first arrived compared to what it does now?
When I looked at it, basically 2015, 2016, the company had been growing nicely, but not exponentially. And the question was really, how do we convert this company, which had been 15 years already doing privatization. There have been some acquisitions done, in different countries, some additions in the Polish market. And the question was then, so what's next? So the big question was about strategy, vision, obviously also the purpose of the company, which I think is one of the topics I really love to talk about, because this had a major impact on how we were able to transform through all our employees, the organization. And obviously then also in terms of all the other aspect being it the values and the company culture as a whole, which is extremely important in our case, because we have a very high fluctuation. So we have a very high dedication and loyalty of our colleagues, it's really important in the pharma space, because it's a highly regulated and sometimes complex space, and I think you have experienced people that helps a lot, especially in issues like quality, manufacturing, but also obviously marketing expertise. So in this context, I think I looked at it with my team and I was able to really build a very strong team, fresh, and I can say they actually stayed with me for at least 9 years, most of them, which is really great. And then we looked first really at the culture and strategic transformation of the company. So really identifying what really are our rights to win in which markets. Then we're basically breaking it down in terms of portfolio, which products do we need to really win in these markets. And then obviously also organizing the whole framework, the whole supply side. So we develop and we manufacture most of our products, which we sell. And then in the last stage, also we went very high into digitalization, which obviously is something which I have been active in IT for 10 years before I started even the investment banking side. And also this was something I really saw a lot of potential in a world which is, as I said, it's a lot of paper and documentation, which is handled through the whole value chain.
Before we dig into that a little bit more then, actually, do you want to give a bit of an overview about Polpharma for anyone who might be unaware? What space do you play in the pharma industry?
Polpharma, as I said, was at the time when it was privatized a Polish company, and has then been growing out of this Polish context. There were also several acquisitions in Poland, which complemented both the industrial and the commercial footprint. In a second stage, there were expansions done, obviously, into Kazakhstan with a large company in Kazakhstan, which also has manufacturing capabilities. And on the other side, also we have a B2B unit in Barcelona. We have a subsidiary in Germany going into tender business, and we're active in selling our products through the B2B arm in Western Europe and through our own operations, basically everything east of Germany, basically, in this context where also the company had originally some ties into these markets. And we have been, I think, successful in growing the company in a very consistent way and very sustainable way. And this is obviously the beauty being in a privately owned company. You make investments, into the future, in the long-term perspective. And especially the shareholder in this respect, he's not really shying back from going into new technologies. For example, we're the only large manufacturer of active ingredients in Poland. Very important matter today when you talk about supply security in Europe. So who is still producing, these active ingredients, which mostly have been, moved to Asia in terms of production place. And today, after COVID especially, everybody woke up and said, how can we protect the supply chain if somebody's not exporting anymore, an active ingredient for paracetamol or antibiotics or whatever have you. So I think that's really in a very important space to be. So, and it has been really also a pleasure in bringing a lot of new concepts into the organization. For example, in the past in Central Eastern Europe, organizations were very hierarchical. And obviously, I came, more from a Swiss American, background. Came then more in this space and said, we need to be more collaborative. We need to basically empower managers. We have to be transparent down to the last person in the organization. What the organization is doing, where are the issues, what are the financial results, what are actually, we have to celebrate wins. We have to talk about the good things people do, and I think we are somehow almost, I would say, a role model in how we do that, how we really bring this to life with innovation programs, with awarding people work they do to the society outside of the organization and other aspects, which is very, very important for us, being an important part of the healthcare system, caring for patients.
And I guess what you mentioned earlier, that your high staff retention would be a testament to that yes. Kind of ethos is working. So which regions does Polpharma operate in specifically, and how do you actually decide which markets you want to prioritize?
Yeah, obviously, historically, Poland has been the biggest market, and it continues to be the largest market for active, and we are the market leader in this and are growing also constantly here. Also, we have been shifting not only in Poland, as in other markets, more from an RX perspective, more into an OTC space. So group-wide, we're almost 40% now OTC products, which I think also are an important element of what people would like to have available to them. And in this aspect, we have very very clear focus areas. Right now, it is Central Asia, Kazakhstan. We see this as a growth region where we have a very large footprint, very capable team, which is highly motivated, and we can obviously transfer a lot of know-how from our Polish perspective into this. And I think that's one of our growth regions, which you see, but also Central Eastern Europe, so basically outside of Poland, being Hungary, Romania, and all the other countries in this space, where we are now building more and more and investing more and more into our products. And what is important to say is that all these markets are different. People always think you can take a portfolio of products and move it into the next market, and everything is different. The top 20 products are different because standards of care are different. Even on the OTC side, that goes through families and generation, what people really like to take out of for a flu or for a headache. And this is really fascinating and makes it also not so easy for others, obviously, to move in, because it needs an understanding of those markets. And I think that there we're also strong in really understanding patients' needs and healthcare system needs. And obviously, we're always trying to become a reliable and strong partner of the healthcare systems and having an open dialogue on the needs also of the healthcare system. So I think this is a little bit in a nutshell. Obviously, we have started 3 years ago a company in Germany and moving it there into the tender space, and also there growing by learning in a very positive way. So I'm very happy about the progress. And right now that's where we are active. We also look for smaller acquisitions in our space. We have worked on some larger combinations in the past, but we think now the way forward is more with smaller acquisitions to build platforms in certain markets where we can bring our products in, which I think would be a very accelerated way of growth.
In your time at Polpharma, obviously you've led the company in the last 10 years through a lot of change and uncertainty. What was the hardest decision you've had to make?
I think during COVID, I would say it's two issues. So during COVID, we really had to obviously produce up to 50% more of medications, because we also produce a lot of hospital medication, especially in the beginning of COVID. You had a lot of hospitalizations, and there was no vaccine available, and it was really very hard for our manufacturing teams to be there every single day, and even more. And the whole testing environment had to be extremely stringent. So when somebody came to the factory, we had containers there, everybody got tested, And then we were really, really lucky that only once we had to take a whole team out, because one of them was tested positive. So in this context, I think this was really tough. The pressure we had to put on them in the respect. Obviously, we were all under pressure, but it's a little bit different when everybody considered home be protected and others have to go every day to the factory and even perform higher than before, right? So this was really, and they did a tremendous job. I can say no, I cannot say it enough. And I think we were able to I think really help save lives, which I think is at the end our mission. And secondly, also we had obviously I don't think it was a decision, but when the war started in Ukraine, I think we had really people which had to go to the military, and we couldn't do anything. So obviously some of our reps are doctors, and they're now working in military hospitals and so forth. I think that was for sure also tough to see, and in this context, we just hope that the war ends soon, hopefully in a peaceful manner.
How has that war affected your business operations? Are you kind of still low on staff? How did you manage that burden?
I think we really do support Ukraine in this context. We donated a lot of medication in the beginning, and then when the system started working again, we invest into this market. We build up new brands, we bring new products. And we support the local teams whatever we can. So I think this is an important element for us, and we see it also as an obligation that to continue doing so.
Has it affected supply decisions or demand?
No, I don't think that we had an issue to supply to a large extent now. Because the market as such, or our market position is not as strong. I would love it would be bigger, obviously. But it's an interesting market. I think it's market 4 or 5 in our group, and it's growing. And obviously it took a dip, and now it's coming back. But we have also there an extremely brave team, very dedicated, and therefore it's also really a positive side to support them and to work with them.
Absolutely. And back to Poland, I know Polpharma is the only manufacturer of 42 medicinal products in Poland, including life-saving medicines. What does that responsibility mean when you're making capacity allocation decisions?
I think that as I said, it's this partnership with the government, right? On certain areas where they're really life-saving drugs, and we have some obligations to produce them for the healthcare system, and I think there is no compromise being made to supply. And I'll give you one example, which was for me fascinating in Europe, because we had a situation where I got a phone call from the French ambassador, and he said, I need this product which you're producing in your factory in Warsaw, in France, in 1 week. We're running out, and we do not find any place where I can get it. And this was exactly one of those products where I'm, obliged to supply to the Polish government. And this product had been blocked for export by the Polish government. And obviously I didn't have a marketing authorization to sell it or even to deliver it to France. So at that time I could not really help, and because we didn't get any export. But you see, this is exactly the problem which is now also being addressed in a European space. I think we'll come to that. My role also, which have medicines for Europe, is that these supply shortages, we need a different approach on how we can secure supply for the patients in Europe. And it cannot be that in one country you have these products, in the other one you have the others, So I think it needs more coordination, and the EU has really moved up also with an institution called HERA, which has been established to help in crisis situations. So, and there have been some tools put in place to help that. But it clearly meant we weren't prepared, as Europe to cope with COVID in that sense.
On kind of Europe and the EU, Poland joined the EU about 20 odd years ago, so probably just a few years after you got involved with Polpharma. Did that affect how you were able to supply different countries around the EU?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's all about standards in the pharmaceutical industry, and obviously all our factories are EU GMP certified. Even our factory in Kazakhstan got now EU certified. So which is very positive. All products have been developed and registered and approved by EMA or local authorities with EMA standards. So I think in that context, it really upgraded the standards we had in that context 20 years ago, and obviously opened the door, especially through our B2B business, to sell our locally produced products into Western Europe, where we work with the biggest players in those markets and supply, products which we produce for them into those markets. And I think really was a positive move for Polpharma that when then really Poland joined the EU.
Obviously, you have a huge output. If my notes are correct, 400 million packages annually. How do you balance that huge scale with maintaining those levels of quality?
Oh, we have a very large quality organization, and we train people constantly. And this, I think, is key in this aspect. I think you need really very well trained people. We are now fully digital in the whole quality stream. There's no one single paper flowing anymore since quite some time already. And I think this really helps to focus on the important matters, right? So it's not the administrative burden, which is actually, the focus area. It's really the quality of the products, and seeing also those potentially small deviations, which would then lead us to not release the product, which I think is really important. And we really have a very high proudness in this sense in terms of quality, and I think that's also what at the end makes you successful, right? Because you cannot have products out there which are not at the highest quality, because at the end, it's people taking a tablet or cough syrup. I think for children, I think it just needs the highest standards.
You obviously mentioned digitization before, and obviously in this context of quality. Is quality the biggest area you've had a push for in digitization, or what does digitization look for you across the board at Polpharma?
No, obviously it's an evolving topic, right? Also now with AI, I think it's something which doesn't stop at all. In the contrary, I think it's accelerating. But again, I think for us, it was different. I'm convinced that you need the overall organization being ready for digital. You can just go in for one area and just invest there and then forget everybody else. I think you look, as always in life, and that was a little bit my way of thinking, is I like the transactional thinking, where you say from the beginning to the end. It's how, who is really responsible, and how can you secure that you have the most effective way of going from the beginning and to end. And so I think we digitized everywhere. We obviously have now, so quality, I think, is in extremely good shape. And now we're going in more and more into higher investments on the industrial side, where, we have, since years, we do digital twins with AI and a lot of advanced analytics and other aspects. But the point is, now we're getting into so well integrated systems that we can look at complexer decisions to be taken, supported by AI, or that different solutions are proposed. Where at the beginning you also looked at these, Gen AI, right? Gen AI is giving you a nicer article, ideas, or very advanced analysis of content, but it doesn't solve really a problem from the beginning to the end. And this is actually where I see AI is at the end and adding value when it came into the next phase. You combine all these areas, and for this you need also an organization which is, from a data architecture standpoint, data governance standpoint, properly set up. And that's where we invested the last few years. So we have really a world-class data architecture, which we can now use to go the next level into AI and to basically into digital solutions, which I think will keep us busy for the years to come.
It's a really interesting time in AI and digitization for pharma. We're at the start of its journey right now. It'll be really interesting to see how that develops over the next few years. Let's switch gears a little bit. You're currently president of Medicines for Europe, representing the entire generic and biosimilar industry. Can you tell me a little bit about Medicines for Europe and what its mission is?
So the mission of Medicines for Europe is basically helping Europe to have affordable medications for all. And I think that's a very simple mission, right? Obviously, we are faced with different budgets in these countries. In Europe, every single country is procuring themselves medication. I think the vaccination of COVID was the only time when the EU stepped up and procured. But in this context, it's important that you have, as an association, we have basically all the players in the generics industry as members. And we're working very closely together, obviously, with the European Union. But we have, more importantly, even in each country, we have local associations which are working with the local government. And this is basically an alignment on the priorities, and also to be able to have the right representation, and also through, again, the local representative which can sit in the parliaments in Europe, the right feedback. Now, in today's world, people still think that, generics is sometimes still a second-class drug, where chemically it's exactly the same drug. Even on the biosimilar side now, which the same thing happened now, that people started really seeing there's a huge benefit if you all of a sudden you can treat 4 times more patients for the same amount of money with a biosimilar, where before with an innovative product, which, all good during the time, the protection of the IP protection is there. But I think at the moment this has ended, I think, generics should be able to enter, and then depending on the products, there's some discounts, 30, 50%, whatever. At the end then is reasonable for also the technology behind the product. But more than that, I think the fascinating piece is that most people don't know. In Europe, 80%, if you count also OTC, of the drugs are basically generic. In the US, it's 90% of the volume, which means, and if you look at the new innovative products which come, they're mainly in smaller fields, in rare disease and more complex, illnesses. So I think this percentage will even increase. So it means we are a substantive player, even that money-wise, the split is different in terms of what people pay for the product. Especially also new therapies are extremely expensive, and and most likely will in the future also pose some ethical questions, in terms of how much money is available in the system, and what are really then the illnesses you can treat as a system. And I think this we'll have to see in the future how this will be managed by the healthcare authorities.
With generics and biosimilars, you'd think the innovator company with the IP, they may outsource some of their manufacturing. to a company like Polpharma, it might be the same manufacturing lines that also produce the biosimilars or generics.
Absolutely. I think that not that they do it today to us, but that there are obviously companies which in contract manufacturing space which work for both. Contract manufacturers like Lonza and others, they obviously work for both industries. I don't think there's there's an issue because it's exactly the same standards, the same quality levels, GMP, all these things are exactly the same. So I think it makes also a lot of sense, especially because you don't want to invest in every single technology yourself. Yeah, and we have a sister company which is producing, developing and producing biosimilars. So there obviously might be that one day they produce for an innovator.
It is interesting that point of the biosimilars where there might be more emotion behind it. There's higher stakes potentially when it's in life-saving situations. Back to medicines for Europe. Just wanted to know what drove you to take on the role of president alongside running Polpharma. You must have been quite busy.
Medicines Europe is organized in a way that you have an executive board, and then you have the organization in Brussels. So the executive board is a group of around 15 people, which meet monthly and really work very actively. Organizations. These are all representative of I think 3 of the local associations, and the rest are company CEOs or heads of Europe. And I have worked in that space for 6-7 years. Was vice president for many years, and then one person had to step down, so I basically had to step up, frankly speaking. And then that's a little bit my credo. I like to do things well, so I just started really to engage for that. But also at the end of this year, I will step down also from that role because I think because I don't have the title anymore. I think it's not so easy to represent towards the European Union. So I think somebody else will take over.
So as you're stepping down from CEO at Polpharma, a colleague of yours, Sebastian Szymanek, will be stepping into your shoes. He's been with Polpharma for about 18 years. So I'm sure he's very capable. But what is one piece of advice you would give to Sebastian that maybe you wish someone had given you when you stepped into the role 10 years ago?
Yeah, Sebastian, we worked together for 10 years, so we know each other very well. He was leading for me always the Polish market and organization in really a very good way. So he's very talented, and I've no doubt that he's the right successor to lead Polpharma into the future. The one piece of advice I would love to have given is that people have told you that you have more time than you think, especially in certain decisions that you especially when many things happen around you. It's important to be calm. I had some of my experience was in military service in Switzerland, so I'm pretty good at crisis management. So I'm pretty calm. But in certain other in the daily life, I think you have to really take a distance, and in many ways, because there's so many things happening around you. You have to take so many decisions, or have to confirm decisions which have been extremely well prepared by your teams. But you need to have this distance, to have this critical way of challenging, and I think this is important to have. And I'm sure he will grow into that, but I think it needs some time to develop that, to take yourself out of the operation and have more of a critical view in also challenging your team.
What is one decision, looking back at your decade as a CEO, what's one decision you're most proud of?
To really change the company fundamentally from a cultural perspective, because I think this was the foundation of our success. To really go out and say, so what is really our purpose? What are really the values we live every day? And then really we had a huge campaign with videos we did and trainings and down to the last soul in our organization, rolling out our values and behaviors, and really trying also to be role models. And I think this was really the decision I'm most proud of, because it really had a huge impact. And there's one thing which I really what surprised me and made me really proud is when I was in a meeting room in Uzbekistan 2-3 years ago, and then somebody brought me a tea, and then I saw the values on the table, and then I talked to this person and asked, what do you think about our values? We only have 3 values. And the person said, I live them every day, and I even try to use them in my private life. And I was thinking, if what he started somewhere in an office in Warsaw, and then really we were able to bring that there, that's just incredible.
Oh, that's a nice story. How about switching that around? What's something maybe you got wrong that taught you a lesson?
In the beginning, I think I wanted to have things happening too fast, because especially in the pharmaceutical industry, everything takes time. Develop product takes years. Even if it's generic, it takes say 1-2 years. If you move product from one factory to the other, it takes again a year. And so all this together means you cannot move fast. So you have to switch in a mode where you're actually doing long-term planning and long-term preparation, and then execute these plans in a very diligent way. But you cannot act fast in that space. And then when I came, I wanted too much too quickly in this organization. I think this got really wrong in the beginning, and I had to go back then to this space.
I guess that goes back to your answer of staying calm, really, doesn't it, a little bit, with that level of decision making. Finally, then, you obviously have over a quarter of a century of experience in the pharma industry, but what is something that still surprises you about pharmaceutical manufacturing?
I don't think it's about manufacture. It's more going in general in industry. What I think what always fascinates me is the innovative side and the whole value chain of pharma, which is incredible. It's in every single aspect, being it a new product, new application of products, new and better ways of manufacturing, safer ways of manufacturing, safer applications of obtain drugs for people, more convenient, or for elderly, doing a drug combination or different forms. So it's a never-ending path of innovation, helping patients to live a better life, and obviously also hopefully in a better world.
Well, lovely sentiment to end on. Well, thank you for your time today, Markus. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much.